Lisa. I'm a sophomore in college doing some job shadowing at Marshfield Clinic. If you're looking for a challenging and exciting career that lets you combine cutting-edge science and research with opportunities to improve lives, then you've come to the right place. Genetics is the study of DNA and inheritance, and careers in this field are rapidly gaining influence and importance. From laboratories to law books, medicine to the media, traditional and non-traditional jobs in genetics are constantly emerging. The demand for people with expertise in genetics will continue to grow. And the cool thing is that you can combine genetics with other areas of interest to come up with some fantastic career options. The best way to learn about these jobs is to hear from people who are doing them. So we've interviewed a variety of professionals. All you have to do is sit back and prepare to be informed.
I've always been interested in ethical issues in medicine, and I've been a pediatrician for my whole professional life. And these issues arise every day with really almost every patient. That is ethical questions, and many of them genetic questions. The first committee I was ever on was a national committee to look into problems of newborn screening, some ethical issues with screening newborns for genetic conditions. And I think we developed guidelines that became widely accepted for 30 or 40 years, so helping to develop policies that guide the conduct of other people in the field. Educating the public through the media, through interviews like this, and with radio and television. And then doing research that helps clarify issues or expand our understanding of it, and contributing to knowledge that's helpful to others.
Well, it seems like law enforcement and genetics are starting to come hand in hand. If I go years back when I first started in law enforcement, we looked for fingerprints, and you did blood typing, and the blood typing was very inconclusive evidence. With the genetics and DNA, knowing what you're looking for in the DNA evidence, being able to collect the samples and handle the samples in the proper manner. In a crime lab, technologist being able to match that profile with the suspect you have is just huge for us. If you look at the television shows, CSI and all the other crime shows that solve a crime in an hour, not including commercials, a lot of it is really bizarre. The DNA evidence is there, but it takes longer than an hour. It takes months to receive your samples back, and you also have to convince a jury that this isn't a television show that they're watching at a trial, that it's real life. The DNA forensics evidence is just tops. It's what we look for as investigators. It's probably the most cost-effective piece of evidence that we can find, and it links suspects to the crime.
Directly, and I think that's the real thrill of employment for me, is to be helping people deal with health problems, family planning issues, and those sorts of things. And I felt human genetics was a very direct means to do that. So I'm doing clinical molecular genetics, which means I oversee a laboratory that does testing of patient specimens for inherited disorders. Individually, genetic disorders are quite rare, but cumulatively they're very common in our population. And so we receive specimens from all over the country and really all over the world to diagnose individuals and families with rare inherited disorders. So much of my work is evaluating test results, also talking with clinicians, physicians, and genetic counselors and nurses about the diagnosis and testing.
I wanted to help families And I think that's why I got into medicine. So I see children mainly, but also some adults that have complex disorders. We use all of the different fields of medicine, cardiology, neurology, endocrinology, all of these various fields combined into genetics to try and understand why a child has the problems that he or she does. I love how it's kind of the combination between seeing patients in the clinic and then research opportunities with high-tech sorts of equipment and tests. So my job is really the cutting edge between the laboratory and the bedside. So I might see a patient in clinic and then order DNA testing that's just been out for the last few weeks or years. It's very new and very cutting edge. So that's exciting to see that type of DNA technology transition to the patient. Not a lot of medical fields are able to do that.
Really, my interest in genetics is the interest in the biology. I also have a strong desire to be involved in teaching and education. So I felt that genetic counseling was a perfect combination where I could do both. So genetic counselors are trained in both genetics as well as counseling. So part of our job is to help order the appropriate testing in the family, provide supportive resources to the family, interpret results, and then just basically help families deal with whatever genetic problem is in their family. Sometimes genetic counselors work as part of research capacity as well. In addition to seeing patients, I work with research projects. Some work in administrative capacities also. I liked having the time. I liked helping families through some of the roughest crises of their life and helping them, watching them get through that process and being able to move forward. Sometimes having gone through a major loss, perhaps losing a pregnancy, sometimes finding out their child has a devastating genetic disorder.
Much of what I do currently is, from a research standpoint, is in the area of pharmacogenetics. So it's looking at genetic variation in individuals and how it affects drug metabolism in them. So, for instance, a medication that's used a lot in surgical patients is an anticoagulant called warfarin, and we've been very interested in how genes that regulate the metabolism of warfarin and regulate its function can be used in predicting the dose of that drug. It's a drug that we didn't have a way of dosing before, and as a consequence it's given us some new insights into making it safer. It's the whole field of biomarkers. It's being able to use things like genetic variants, variations in proteins within the person, or various other little intermediary metabolites, and use those as a way of being able to link with clinical data and other phenotypic data and predict what's going to happen to someone before it does. So avoid hospitalizations, be able to predict the outcome of therapy, be able to get the right diagnosis to start with.
For me, I've always been interested in medicine, I've always been interested in healthcare, but I'm also interested in computers. So the field I'm in now is a place where I get to combine both interests at the same time. Typically my day is divided between working with people who develop computer systems to support researchers, as well as working with programmers and scientists who work directly on my research projects. Those research projects involve things like developing new tools to find genetic associations in medical records, designing new computer systems that are easier to use, developing algorithms to find new matches between genes and diseases.
I've been in IT for over 20 years, and I've been involved with genetics over the last 6 to 7 years. I'm currently going back to University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I've been picking up epidemiology and decision support and more information technology. And that's something that I'd really like to look into, because I believe that the future is in what we're doing now with personalized medicine. Well, when you're dealing with genetic studies, especially now that we're getting the human genome mapped, we're talking about lots and lots of data. We can't people in the informatics or IT area, they're going to be the ones that will be able to take that data and make meaningful information or actionable knowledge out of that data. So our contribution is identifying ways to understand what the relationships are. Once we find the relationships, how do we translate that into clinical practice so that the patient ultimately benefits?
Because genetics is expanding so fast and the frontiers are just so open that you can make it into what you want. And if you're able to do that, then you can do whatever else you want in addition. And I think that allows then for people to spend time with their families or to pursue other interests like writing or other hobbies. But when you have this kind of a background in genetics, what you write, you know, is rooted in the facts or the standard of care. And it's just that much easier for me, I think, to write that than someone without a genetics background. I hope it makes an impact by taking genetics or subjects in science and medicine and putting them in plain language and making it easy for many, many people to have a working knowledge of science and medicine and kind of what they need to do or need to know for their own health, their own bodies.
As I started to learn more about different genetics careers, the one thing that really struck me was in looking through a lot of the different textbooks that were out there about genetics and biology and things like that, you'd always see really cool photos in there and really cool diagrams. And it just kind of clicked that one day I said, well, you kind of have to know you have to understand the biology behind it to actually be able to draw a picture of it or take a photo that actually shows something that is meaningful to people. So I decided that maybe that'd be a nice place to kind of pursue what I wanted to do. And I stuck to a pretty traditional science path in terms of my education, but the artistic background and training that I had really led to a lot of opportunities that maybe I wouldn't have gotten if I didn't have that background. It kind of helped my resume or my application stand out a little bit more. And I contacted a lab at the Children's Memorial Institute of Education and Research. And there was a research lab there that was working on neural tube formation, so the actual formation of like the spine around your spinal cord, and any genetic causes into spina bifida, which is where it doesn't close properly. One of the projects that they were talking about is actually taking photos of the mouse embryos, because really you learn a lot more from a photo of what's going on than just looking at a test tube or looking at data out of a computer. And when I started to explain to them, oh, well, I actually have a history of professional photography training and I've done a lot of photography work as well as artwork, they actually asked me to join their team right away. I like to make jewelry, I make it professionally, so even just like the simple shape of a DNA helix can be really, really elegant. And so I've actually used those kinds of shapes in trying to make different necklaces out of beads that are maybe a little bit more interesting than just a flat string of something. And at the same time, it kind of pulls in a very personal nature into the jewelry, because then it's actually something that's real in the world and not just some made-up design.
I think the most general way to describe my job is that I find sources of money and I take sources of money and I direct it towards appropriate genetics projects so that everyone in the state receives clinical genetic services and also that special projects related to genetics can be done. And I do that through different grants and contracts and a variety of means. But it allows me to work on something a little bit different every day. So the very first part of my day is going in, checking my email, checking my voicemail, and I could have emails or voicemails from the Secretary of Health Services, that I might need to respond to an inquiry that the governor made, or I might have to get back to a parent who had a question about newborn screening in Wisconsin, which is another program that I have a lot to do with. It could be someone from another genetics program in another state who's asking, oh, we're planning on doing this. Have you done this in Wisconsin? Are you thinking about doing it? How can we work together?
As a genetic epidemiologist, my job is very fun. I'm always learning, I am always challenged. So genetic epidemiology, again, looking at that combination, interaction between genetics and personal behaviors such as diet or exposures in the environment and your risk of disease. So I'm working on study design and analysis for various types of studies. And I'm involved a bit in administration, so in meetings I travel a bit to speak about our research to different groups who might want to set up biobanks and get involved in collaborative research with us. Do a lot of study planning and a lot of looking at data and getting excited about our results and writing papers. I've had the opportunity literally to travel the world, and I have collaborators and friends all over the world, from Australia to India to Hong Kong and throughout the US, and travel pretty regularly.
Genetics has always been an area that has fascinated me. Back when I did my training for medical technology, we certainly had numerous genetics classes, and I always found it very interesting to think of how you can pass things from one generation to another. Genetics testing and finding someone who might be at risk for hereditary cancer is still in its infancy, and there's a lot of education that needs to be done. So I really feel each day when I go out, it's my opportunity to talk to as many physicians that I can and help instill in them the passion of identifying patients who may be at risk. And that's what gets me going in the morning, is knowing that each day I can potentially have a direct impact on someone's life. But we're definitely just at the tip of an iceberg, and whether we're talking hereditary cancers or Alzheimer's or diabetes or cardiovascular disease, autism, pick a medical topic, and undoubtedly within the next few years there will be some kind of a diagnostic test that will be commercially available to the public that they can then utilize in conjunction with their healthcare professional to have an impact on their medical management.
As an account executive, I work in sales with Myriad. So I guess just to really put it, I guess to understand it the easiest, my goal is to convince healthcare providers that work with cancer patients that our products and the test results from our products are going to be clinically valuable to how they manage those cancer patients. So a lot of my job revolves around trying to convince physicians of the clinical usefulness of our tests and our products, and for those physicians who already are convinced, to keep them convinced. Because Myriad Genetics is based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, I have the opportunity to work out of my home office in Madison, Wisconsin. And so as a result of that, I spend most of my day traveling to different clinics and different cancer centers, visiting providers who work with cancer patients. I don't spend every day in the same office looking at the same computer screen, and that's just, for me personally, it's something that I appreciate.
So these are just a few of the career options within the field of genetics. As medicine and computers continue to advance, the field of genetics will continue to expand, and you can be a part of it. For more information about the field of genetics or career options, consider job shadowing, or ask your teacher to help you find a mentor. Also, don't forget to check the back page of the booklet that goes along with this video for a number of great websites and other suggestions on how to prepare for a career in genetics.